Hello there. This is John Burroughs again. We're going to go for our second podcast. I want to thank everyone for the first podcast. I felt I was a little weak in that, and I probably might be a little weak in this one also, but we did get 94 views. Unfortunately, I would have liked to heard back by email from some of you on what your opinions were on politics and any other subjects you'd like to talk to me or like us to talk about in the future. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of that type interaction. But just remember, the email address is johnburrowspodcast@gmail.com. That's where you can feedback. All right, today's podcast is going to be on drugs, and I don't want to say I'm excited about this podcast because that might be the wrong terminology to use. I guess I'm kind of looking forward to it because I have a lot of experience when it comes to drugs. Um, I'm approaching 70 years old, but to give you an idea, um, I took my first drink at 13 years old. I took my first hit of acid at 13 and a half years of old, 13 and a half years old. And I did all the drugs that you can think of back in the 60s and 70s. Um, did a lot of LSD, a lot of cocaine, a lot of those type of things. And what I'm trying to get across on this podcast especially is that I hear so often that things like marijuana or even alcohol is the gateway to stronger things. Well, I have a different opinion about that. Based on my experience, first of all, you have to realize we're all different. So if for some reason you're getting the inkling to try drugs, um, especially the dangerous drugs, the heroin, the crank, the meth, the fentanyl, the things like that, you want to stay away from that inkling unless you know yourself explicitly. And if it's a prescription drug, you only want to take it according to prescriptions because that's what it's designed for. It's not designed to be abused. Um, anyway, getting back to the gateway. The gateway for any person to move from one drug to a stronger drug to another drug to any drug is not the drug itself. It's you. It's you personally. You have to have the ability to know yourself. You have to have the ability to watch other people and see how they react. We're all different. So if you don't know yourself, and just because you see someone drop acid and have just the time of their lives or go into an a parallel universe and enjoy it immensely, that doesn't mean it's going to help you. It may not. I will tell you this. Uh, I am one that thinks marijuana basically, essentially, in most cases, is harmless. And it should be legalized for recreational and medicinal use, period. Because if alcohol is legalized for recreational use, so to speak, with certain regulations, then marijuana should be the same with certain regulations. Having said that, going back into the 60s, like I said, I took a lot of LSD. In fact, I would venture to say in a time period, of 3 to 5 years, I don't think there's that many people. And of course, like I told you at the beginning, I don't base any of this on fact. This is all opinion. I'm not sure there's too many people that took more LSD than I did. Um, to give you an example, over a 3.5 month to 4 month period, I probably took 500 hits of acid. At another time, my friends and we took acid pretty much all night long. So when we felt the acid starting to fade, we would take another hit. We wanted to see how long we could maintain a constant high. Not an especially smart thing to do, because eventually you're just gonna get too tired and fall asleep. Here's the thing. I don't know how to put this. LSD for me in my younger years was very helpful. I don't know why I've always had the ability to look into myself and say, I know I can handle certain things. And the LSD I really felt I could handle and did. And one of the things it did for me was open up a whole new world of tolerance, a whole new world of being able to read people. And I'm being egotistical about this, but I could take a look at a person and talk to him within 3 minutes and tell you whether he's dangerous, funny, sick, weird, whatever. I could probably tell you what exactly he was like. I dropped a lot of LSD with all sorts of different people and saw all sorts of different people have different types of trips. A lot of them were bum trips. And I feel these were people that really did not understand who they were. And just because they saw other people having fun, they think we're all the same, and we're not. Now, having said that, I think, like I said, that LSD did tremendous good for me in my youth. In my senior years, there's been things going on that where there might be side effects that aren't doing me tremendous good. But at the same time, that was one drug that for me did some good. I look at people nowadays and I see a world under the influence. I see people, really what they're trying to do is they're trying to find constant happiness. And it's like someone, and first of all, let me say there's no such thing as constant happiness. I think we all know that. You'll never be happy all the time. But for instance, you can get addicted to a lot of things if they make you feel good. I know people that they get massages on regular basis because it just clears their mind, it clears their body, it makes them feel really good, and they spend a lot of money on massages. Are they addicted? Sure they are, because they feel happy, they feel good when they take it. I know people, or have known people, that have abused pills, and that was their fault. I mean, I have to take prescription medication for some serious back problems, and quite frankly, I know what would happen if I were to overdose, or not overdose, but take more than the required amount that I should take. I'd feel really happy for a while, and that's a hard thing to fight off. But in the end, you're going to come down from that, and you're going to be worse off than you were. So when you're prescribed a drug, you're prescribed a drug for a reason. If you're prescribed a painkiller and it's to take as needed, you take it as needed and you don't exceed the dose. So in today's world, I see people, like I said, they're trying to find happiness because we live in such a screwed up world. We live in a world of pedophiles, constant violence and shootings. And, one of the easiest ways to make you forget is some type of drug or alcohol or something like that. But in the end, that makes you forget temporarily and makes everything worse later on. My particular philosophy is this: happiness is something that happens on an infrequent occurrences. Happiness is the perfect state, and that just doesn't happen that often. But it happens enough that we all get to experience it. And in the end, we want to be happy all the time, and you can't. So when I sit there and I have my own weird form of meditation, I do a lot of talking to myself because no one knows you better than yourself. No one can call you out better than yourself. No one knows if you're lying to yourself than yourself. So when I do these type of things, I find that that I can't expect happiness all the time. But what I can strive for is contentment. And contentment is really establishing something reasonable, logic, that excludes greed, a thirst for power, excludes all those type of negative things. Contentment is finding a point where, and once again, you're not going to be content all the time. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. That's going to happen. But at least when you go to bed each night, or when you reflect at any time of the day, whatever, you can say, I've done this, this, and this, and I feel content. You can't say that every day, but you could say, you can say that every day, but you can't say, I feel happy every day, all day. It doesn't happen. It's not part of the human condition. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, I took all the drugs of the 60s and 70s. I don't know. I mean, I took heroin, I took crank, I took cocaine. I shot some of these drugs, or geezed it, or whatever you want to call it. And, some of the things I learned is we are all different, but one of the things you have to watch out for in your quest for happiness is you're not going to find it through drugs. One of the things that has kind of saved me is the fact that I have a prescription. I won't mention what it is, but it's one of the things they talk about all the time, the big opioid crisis. I have a prescription for a certain opioid that helps my chronic back pain tremendously. Without it, my life would be pretty miserable. I really wouldn't be able to do a lot of things, and it's helped me quite a bit. So, but I never take more than the prescribed amount. In fact, I usually have some left over from a 30-day supply, and which means I'm not taking it. I'm taking it as needed, not as a preventative, but as needed. So I know that once my back starts to feel a certain way, if I'm going to go out and do something, that involves a lot of walking or whatever the case may be, it might be very important for me to take that, especially if I'm with other people, because I don't want to ruin their time, because I have to stroll. I can't walk with the same amount of ease that I used to. The other thing that enters this whole conversation, and really is another podcast entirely, is Big Pharma. Okay, now Big Pharma is, I mean, you've all heard the stories. You've all heard how expensive it is without certain types of health plans and things like that. They're like any other large corporation. You know, uh, it's up to you not to get addicted. It's up to doctors to be responsible and not to overprescribe. So you're the only one that can prevent certain things from happening to you. Now, that doesn't include 100% of the people. There are people out there that have to take certain things to make themselves stable enough to make decisions. But anyway, I wanted to get this across because at one time in the 60s and in the hippie period, I thought marijuana and LSD was going to save the world. And I thought the hippie principles were going to save the world. Don't get me wrong. The whole hippie movement was an idealistic movement. It was too perfect. And anytime you have human beings involved, they're like loose cannons. You have the human factor that goes on, and so it can't really happen, and it didn't happen. But a lot of things that came out of that made people that were headed down a, I don't know, more violent path, a more criminal path, made them realize that it would have been a beautiful situation if it could have worked out, but realistically it didn't. So anyway, back to Big Pharma. Big Pharma is going to, like any other corporation, is going to try and make their money. They're bonused on it. They're going to do those type of things. We do have to fight, that type of greed, which is a whole other podcast. So, I mean, I could talk about all the individual drugs. I could think about different subjects on cocaine, different subjects on heroin, how to take it, when to take it, who to take it with, all those type of things. But I'd rather do that if I get a little feedback from you guys. Those of you who have never taken drugs, those of you who have had bad or good experience, please go to the email and give me your feedback on these podcasts, because I will take the next podcast and open it up with your feedback or suggestions on subjects to talk about. And if some of the suggestions are so compelling, well, I'll make an entire podcast out of it. So please take a listen. And please respond. It doesn't have to be long. Tell me what you think of the podcast. Tell me what you think about the subject. Tell me you like it, you think it stinks, whatever. But the thing that's going to make this work and hopefully help people is if I can get some feedback and some thoughts as to what's going on out there. Anyway, this is John Burroughs going to be signing off here. Hope to hear from you guys, and I have no set time or period for when the next podcast will be, but I'm going to sign off. Hope to hear from you. We did get a number of views, which I was happy with. I just was kind of disappointed there was no feedback. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.